That was Joan Harrigan, expert in Kundalini. She's a monastic, I enjoyed that, Phil, because the term Kundalini is used. I think the first time I heard Kundalini, I was watching the movie Woodstock, and there's a scene where a guy's doing this very intense breathing pranayam, and he's trying to
Huh.
get energy, and it was all about having a very flashy experience of energy going up the spine. But she was very clear that their process is gentle. It's much more than that, and it's about energy. It seems nourishing the body and bringing higher states of consciousness. So
Yeah.
I thought she was very clear in what she had to
Yes.
say.
It's fascinating, the different perspectives that people have on Kundalini and the
Hmm.
different methods, and some of it is seems to be just misunderstanding or sensationalism, but some of it is just that we're dealing with a phenomenon that is essentially an innate aspect of uh, the creation, essentially,
Hmm.
and is sort of guiding the spiritual progress of individual human beings, or driving it. And so, some of it, these differences are just different methodologies, different interpretations, different ways into the phenomenon of spiritual growth. And I don't know if there's one right way or wrong way. We've already in our archive we have at least two or three other people who have talked with great expertise about Kundalini. We interviewed Stuart Savatsky. We
Hmm.
interviewed Sally Kempton. I think there may even be others who we've asked about Kundalini and their interpretation of it. So anybody interested in listening should go back into the archive and at least listen to those as well.
Right. It is fascinating, and it does seem, Phil, from what she said and what others have said, there may be some people that spontaneously have very powerful experiences of the rising of energy in the spine, what we would call Kundalini, and are sometimes confused with it. And like she said, they're not a hotline for people having those problems. That's issues that have to be taken with others that can deal with it, but that it is part of the human physiology to have that experience, and that it can be cultured in a way that's very comfortable, soft and gentle and easy, and one should gain great uh, balance and
Yeah.
stability from it.
Yeah, and she used the term toward the end when she said they weren't equipped to handle Kundalini emergence or emergency.
Right.
Those terms were thrown about back in the 70s when people like Stuart Savatsky were in the dealing with people having unsettling experiences, often through whatever spiritual path they were on, sometimes by being overzealous and sort of inducing experiences they couldn't handle or that just happened, and didn't know what to do. And there were people turning to psychiatrists and psychotherapists who were not educated about
Hmm.
such things and just interpret them as psychotic experience and medicated people, some even institutionalized people, or put
Hmm.
them through psychotherapeutic practices that did not honor or take into account that this could be a dramatic moment in a person's spiritual path if understood and framed and handled in the right way. That's why they started using the term spiritual emergence instead of
Right,
emergency.
right. And that's why I think it's good that yeah, over the years, in the last 30, 40 years, many psychotherapists, many people in the area of Western psychology, dealing with mental health, have become more familiar with these terms and procedures. I remember Dr. Bernard Gluck at the Hartford Institute of Living was one of the first psychiatrists to look into this sort of thing. And since then, there have been many, many others. Phil, I wanted to ask you about one thing. Uh, I, I really do still struggle with the concept of non-duality. Now, conceptually, just theoretically, we're all one. I understand that, but experientially, and she didn't say this, but so many times I've heard from non-dual teachers or whatever. Oh, it's already there. There's nothing to learn. It's all one,
Yeah,
and all
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But there's still, we live in a world where experientially, for me anyway, there's myself, there's you, and there's everything else I experience.
Of course.
And on some deep level, I can understand that theoretically we're all tied together on a quantum level, on a level of consciousness or whatever. But I think the way some folks mention it so matter of factly still leaves me somewhat confused, or thinking that everyone else in the world is having a much more profound experience of life than me.
Maybe not. Maybe it's the opposite. And I think I don't know. We've talked about this business of non-duality. I think there's a lot of confusion, and people often talk about non-duality as if recognizing or even acknowledging that there's differences and separation and apparent duality in the world is a mistake. That you should somehow operate as if everything's one, in which case it wouldn't matter what side of the road you drove on, or
right.
Falling in love would be impossible. And whether you look at the manifest world and the difference between you and me and everybody else as illusory or real, it doesn't much matter. You still have to function.
Right.
You're still in a body and all that. And I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about the interpretation of words like illusion and real and unreal. It just means that, to me, I mean, the simple way I try to look at it is that if you call something illusory, it could mean it doesn't exist, or it could mean that it's not what you think it is. And I think it's more the latter kind of interpretation. The world is obviously real and it exists. It's just not what we think it is.
Right,
There's
exactly.
more to it.
That I understand, and I'm sure there's people listening in that are thinking, "Oh, Dennis, this is just so simple." But I will tell you right now, I'm feeling at two with everything, and occasionally at one with something, But no, I do get it. I think, but again, a work in process, something
Yeah.
we want to go, and
on the experiential level, you either experience oneness or you don't. But even whether you do or you don't, you still have to, as the Zen people say, you still have to chop wood and carry water.
Exactly.
And you still have to feed this body, and you still have to, talk to human beings who may be one with you, but they're still also different. And to me, that's the more sophisticated understanding of non-duality, that non-dual oneness includes the apparent dualities. Otherwise, it's not non-dual.
There you go. Well, let's leave it on that note.
It's all too crazy, but
we'll unravel that knot as our podcast continues. And lots more wonderful guests coming up, and stay tuned. But again, we're at spiritmatterstalk.com. Tell your friends about it. You can email us. All the information is there at the podcast website. And till next time, Phil, another excellent guest.
Yes. Okay, Dennis. Keep that Kundalini rising in the meantime.
Keep it going up.
Okay.
All right. Take care.
All right. Take care.